So in terms of risk reduction, you have an interesting story. You could probably tell us, Cindy, huh?
Yeah, business value at a university nonprofit, we measure things a little differently. What Bob's referring to is we had an incident back in December of 2006. I remember the fall of 2006 talking to the President's office and the Development Office about how important it was to image their documents and get rid of the filing cabinets and start to store everything so they can have it accessible anytime, anywhere. And they're like, yeah, sounds great, we'll get around to it. They never got around to it. Well, unfortunately, December 25th, on Christmas Day 2006, a tornado hit the main administrative building and just knocked it down. I remember going there that day and seeing papers scattered all over the lawn. And I was just like, oh no, here we go. The financial aid office was in there, the bursar's office, of course, the administration, the president, and the development office. The good news is, from a student perspective, our true customers, financial aid had been doing imaging for several years. So we were able to simply set them up in a different office. They could get hold of all their documents. They were all imaged and stored. No problems. They could process financial aid, see what was going on with all the source documents, use a lot of source documents with financial aid. And the same with Bursar's office, back in business within 24 hours. The President's office and Development office, not so much. But anyhow, right after that, the next day, or maybe 2 days after, they started coming around going, that imaging thing, can we get that now? Is it too late? Can we image all those papers that are all over the lawn? Well, they're a little wet and they're a little unorganized, but we'll see what we can do. So, on the way to storage, we did talk about documents we could save and image. So business continuity became a real issue that people understood, because that's one of the things you think it's not going to happen to your office. You plan for it, you talk about it, but it's not going to happen to us. And then when it happens, there's a sudden interest in actually listening to what we've been preaching to them. So it's very important. The other key business value with document imaging is accessibility. And you referenced that. But basically, in Embry-Riddle, we have 3 distinct campuses: Daytona Beach, Florida, Prescott, Arizona, and then we have 130 locations around the United States and Europe that are teaching centers. And the admissions process for students is very source document driven. Financial aid documents, transcripts, military documents, etc. And so the ability to image all of those and produce workflow gave us a competitive advantage and really streamlined our admissions process for those in high value customer service, which is what we're all about. That's what sells the business of higher education, quality education, and good customer service. So those are the 2 things we really measure on: business continuity and accessibility.
Yeah, so that's a huge issue for everyone, I guess, is this notion of distributed image processing versus centralized or consolidated processing of content. Monica, did you have any thoughts on the return on investment?
Boy, I am really looking forward to getting to the point in my career where I get the luxury of evaluating potential solutions based on their return on investment, instead of just trying to get through the ones that are absolutely mission critical and cannot continue to do business the way they are now. Instead of evaluating return on investment, I feel like I spent my whole career just prioritizing the people who are truly desperate for a different way to do business.
Background, you prior to this had worked in the public sector.
Yep, I got 20 years of public sector consulting, and I'm not seeing that it's much different in any large organization. That as the organization meets different challenges, like all of a sudden we have inspectors that have remote offices and they need remote access, and remote access doesn't work with a paper file. Or all of a sudden the number of transactions we have to handle is going to increase by 25%, and we literally cannot put any more bodies in cubes in our current inbox space. So we got to be able to let our current people do 25% more work in a day. So those are the kinds of challenges that I typically find myself responding to, is we just simply absolutely have to have a better, more efficient way of doing this, or we're not going to make it.
So Cindy, in terms of your budgets and project dollars and so on, how does content management compare, say, with the spending on ERP or CRM or something like that?
Well, from a license perspective, it's not too different, but from the human resource and support perspective, it's night and day. It was about 2 years ago we added a second person to our content management support infrastructure. So now we have two. We have over 10 million documents imaged. We've been using imaging since 1994. But anyhow, so the good news about the way we support things in content management and imaging is it seems to run itself. There's not a lot of time spent on maintenance. We spend, or the two support analysts I have, spend all of their time on looking for new ways to leverage the technology. Working with HR to figure out what they can do there, working with various departments, figuring out what they can do there. Of course, we have a line of people still waiting from the tornado, wanting to be imaged, but they spend most of their time, I would say 90%, doing new initiatives and expanding the utilization of what we have. I can't say that about our ERP applications, where they spend a lot of time on patch management and break fix and what have you with errors that come up in the system. So it's a whole different support structure, and it's a much better, more positive support structure because we're enabling new use of the technology as opposed to just maintaining the old one and keeping it afloat.
Tom, have you seen a change over time? Is the investment level in ECM going up?
Yeah, I think two things. We got to put customer content management in front of it. It would help us to justify the funds. It does seem like anytime you say customer, that it helps you to get funds a little bit easier. But I think, you've got the customer relationship management processes, which help you manage the customer. You got ERP that helps you manage the business. And I think ECM sits in the middle of both of those, right? So the data that you store helps you to manage your resources, whether it's your people, whether it's your assets, whether it's your capital investments. And I think on the customer side, right, you want your customer service people, your relationship managers to be able to see the same things that your customers are looking at. So I think, in a lot of cases now, the investments in CRM and ERP, in fact, drive more investment into ECM, and it all works together.
So in terms of projects, you see investment coming from attachment or being tied to a business process as opposed to getting funding for infrastructure stuff that is kind of shared?
Yeah, I think, we have to, our infrastructure, for example, in the repositories in the content management space, in the last 3 years, I think has grown over 200%, right? So we constantly have to be focusing on the infrastructure, and that's become more of a given. So we have to keep up with that. But more of the actual investment in the discretionary projects is driven by the businesses, which need that information and need to get that information out to our customers and out to our businesses in order to run their business more effectively.
How about you, Farm? Have you seen similar?
Yeah, I mean, we're very much similar to what Steve was saying, where we have, our ECM type of staffing is probably roughly 10% of what we would see in the ERP and CRM space. Right now, it's a little bit more skewed where I work, just because we've been moving towards global consolidation of our systems for ERP and CRM, so we're a little bit more highly staffed there than we would be normally. But in the ECM space, we, just because it wasn't a strategy out of the door, we had a lot of point-based installations. So we have almost every product. I mean, we have Documentum, we have SharePoint, we have FileNet, we have IPN. So different areas seem to be using it in different ways. But we also come from a very regulated environment. So there is a lot of these Chinese walls that exist between the different businesses to make sure that things don't get shared when they're not supposed to be. So there hasn't, even though we're going towards a consolidation of tools, we are not necessarily looking at it enterprise-wide. There's some strategies that we develop.
Well, so in terms of the strategy, do you have a formal strategy then for your organization, how you're going to bring content management into your business model?
Yeah, we actually went out and hired a data czar a little while ago. Yeah, that was the first time I heard the term. And his job is really to put a full data strategy together across both our structured as well as our unstructured content. Look at everything from a compliance and regulatory standpoint, and also from a technology angle to make sure that is the cost of the functionality more prudent than the integration costs. So if we are using a very IBM technology stack in one area, then maybe that's the way we want to go, versus in shared services, we may be more heavy on the Oracle technology.